feared and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hit you with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and such eager my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son still had me life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Disciples of Ed here on the Always Next Year podcast network. Just two of us here tonight. I'm your host, Rob, joined tonight by Steve. How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing all right. Ready to roll. Get back into the season.
Yeah, it's been a minute since we've had all three of us on. I think I was absent for an episode, then you were absent last week, and then Bork absent this week. And it looks like we have a special guest situation lined up for next week, so there would probably be four of us on then. But for tonight, just the two of us, Steve and I. And nothing to recap Flyers-wise because, quite frankly, they haven't played in almost 2 weeks because of their COVID situation. They will return to action on Thursday night at home against the New York Rangers, and then after that, they've got a Sunday afternoon battle up in Boston against Tahoe. Forgot about that. Out at Lake Tahoe, 3 p.m. Sunday against the Boston Bruins. Steve, what's your idea on how do you think this whole COVID situation and being off for 2 weeks will affect the Flyers? Do you think they're going to be, a little bit tight coming out? Do you think that maybe they'll be a little bit rusty, or do you think that being off for almost 2 weeks that'll help kind of loosen them up a little bit and give them some fresh legs going into these important games?
It's really tough to say because we haven't seen this situation happen yet with us. And we've kind of seen how it's happened for other teams, but for us, I just think some of these guys probably could have used a break, but then you got to think that so many guys also had COVID, and they're going to be recovering from that. In terms of play, I could see the Rangers game really just being like a test of just, hey, let's just play a very, very basic game, try to get back up to speed in a way. But it's going to be interesting because we have some big names still on that COVID list, and hopefully we can just survive through this when we get back.
Yeah, it's obviously important that those guys who are on the COVID list, they get the time that they need to get healthy. But I'm thinking, you mentioned, I think the last time that you were on, that Sean Couturier coming back from his injury when he did may need a little while to kind of get his legs underneath him and get back into the swing of things, and how you didn't really want to rush him back into game action. And he did come back on Sunday, the last game before the COVID shutdown, the February 7th against the Capitals, and had an effective game that day, scored a goal, and was really effective. But I think that having a couple weeks off for him, that's big, because he wasn't maybe 100% when he came back, and if that was the case, then he should definitely be 100% after probably about a month or so of playing just one game. So I think that him being such a key player in the Flyers lineup and being the physical presence that he is for them, that's a big thing. That's something that they can really benefit from. Couturier having additional time to get well and kind of get back to 100% physically. So that's one positive takeaway that I have from it. I do agree. Some of these other guys who are on the COVID list, it might be a little bit more of an issue for them. But we've seen a bunch of teams who have had their COVID breaks, some of them to start the season, others after the season started, and they were able to come back and play some pretty good hockey pretty much right off the bat. Florida, that was a situation with them. Dallas as well. But some other teams have kind of struggled in this area. So it'll be interesting to see how the Flyers go. I think that coming back against a team like the Rangers that hasn't played so well, and two of the first three games after they come back against those Rangers, and then also two up in Buffalo as well, not playing the toughest competition aside from that Boston game, I think that could help them a little bit, maybe kind of ease their way back into things while not facing the toughest competition as well. So the upcoming schedule, I think, is in their favor. And also, as I mentioned, the Couturier thing, having some extra time to get back to 100%, that'll help as well.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely agree on the Couturier aspect, because I didn't really think about it when I started talking. But yeah, like I said, he needed that. He needed a little bit more time to get healthy, and hopefully this really helped him, especially after he was able to get on the ice and realize where he was at after one game. But I do think that on paper it looks like it's a good schedule to really get back into it, and then hope that the guys currently still on the list can get back healthy and back to the team. But Buffalo did kick our ass that one game. New York does have some potential in their lineup, and Artemi Panarin's phenomenal. Boston has been kicking our ass, and I blame you for that, for thinking that we could sweep them early in the year.
Of course. God damn it.
But it's definitely going to be interesting. And I honestly don't really know what to expect, but I am very, very excited to see these guys, the taxi squad from Phantoms, to come up, play Thursday against the Rangers and maybe potentially against the Bruins. But it'll be a good, kind of peek to these guys that we weren't really expecting to see for another year, maybe even 3 years, that'll be playing with us.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see those prospects up as well. By the way, to get into that COVID list, Travis Konechny was the latest addition. He was added 2 days ago. Oscar Lindblom been on the list. Scott Lawton, Morgan Frost, who's injured anyway, he's out for the season, so that doesn't really matter there.
Just sucks for him, man.
It does.
He's already
it does
hurt.
Suck for him.
He's got COVID, and then there's Lindblom, just got over fucking cancer. Now he's got COVID. It's terrible.
Then Voracek, Voracek, Giroux, and Justin Braun to round out the list. And this actually doesn't necessarily specify that they have COVID. It just means that they've been exposed to it. No word on actual positive tests, at least as far as I'm aware, on the team. This is just a list of guys who have been apparently exposed to the coronavirus. So that is why they're on that list. And some big names there. TK, obviously a big name. Lindy, obviously a big name. Scott Lawton had the hat trick in the last game before the shutdown. That's a big name. Then obviously Voracek and Drew, two veteran members of the core. So those are some big names that the Flyers, they're going to need them to get going once they do come back from their COVID list.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But, as long as JVR can keep his hot streak season of all hot streak seasons, then we should be at least decently all right.
Well, who knows how that's going to happen. I mean, he's averaging well over a point a game, and this is a guy who, for the course of his career, has averaged well under a point per game. Venture to say that's probably not going to keep up, but who knows? I mean, it's a weird year. It's with all the COVID stuff going on, so stranger things have happened. And JVR has played excellent hockey lately, so if he does keep it up, I think they should be in some pretty good shape.
Yeah, definitely.
So taking a little bit more of a look at those games ahead, as I mentioned, the one against the Rangers, and then out in Tahoe against the Bruins, against the Rangers again, and then we'll just look at those ones because those are the ones that are coming up before the next time we record. How do you think the Flyers match up against the Rangers? As I mentioned, the Rangers struggling a little bit. They obviously dealt with the Tony DeAngelo situation that kind of messed them up a little bit as well. And they're a young team. They have a lot of talent. They haven't really been able to put it together much this season. But how do you feel about the Flyers coming back from their COVID days off against New York?
I like the potential that the Rangers have in their lineup. I just don't know if it's really anything that can really break out in a sense. I mean, like I said, Artemi Panarin is fantastic. Buchnevich is having a fantastic season as well so far. Adam Fox is really establishing himself as basically their number one defenseman. But which
isn't saying much because they're pretty depleted on defense, to say the least.
It's true. Jake, that Trouba contract isn't entirely working out. I think he was getting almost $8 million a year, something like that, or maybe it was just 8 years. I could be wrong there. But it's a team that needs a lot of work and just overall progression on what potential they do have throughout the lineup. Their goaltending is very good. Shesterkin and Georgiev are very good, but this is probably the best team we could play, considering Buffalo did, kick our ass one game this year. It's probably the best team we could play with, missing, these big names like Giroux, Konechny, Voracek, Lindblom. It's just see what the guys we have can do against, kind of what you would assume is a weaker roster in New York. So It's going to be great to see. I think it's something we can win, and hopefully some of our prospects can kick their prospects' ass.
Yeah, so I see this upcoming game against the Rangers as the Flyers consistently have been outshot, outchanced in just about every game so far this season, and going against a team that has a weaker defense, that isn't as good as some of the other teams that we faced, or the Flyers have faced on the back check. I see this as a chance for the Flyers to kind of, start to establish themselves in the offensive end a little bit, maybe get a game under their belt where they actually are able to outshoot and outchance their opponent. And I think that if they are able to do that, it's something that they could build on going forward. And it's important because right after that is a game against Boston, who has dominated us 0-2-2 against them so far in the 4 games this season. So it's a good time for that matchup against the Rangers, and I really look forward to seeing what the Flyers can do offensively against a weakened defensive team. Like, as you said, they have great goaltending, but great goaltending can only carry a team so far when they have a bad defense in front of them. We've seen that so far with Carter Hart. He's had some games where he's struggled because the defense in front of him has just been shit too. So yeah, it's a good time for that matchup to happen for the Flyers. What do you think the Flyers need to do to pull out a win out of Tahoe against the Bruins? Because they've had 2 games where they've had leads against them. They blew a 2-goal lead in the first of the 2 game set last time and ended up losing a heartbreaker in overtime. And the first time they played them, they had a lead up in Boston, a game that kind of went back and forth a little bit and really didn't play very well. We're lucky to have a lead in that game, but ended up losing that one in a shootout. Got dominated once up in Boston and got shut down by Tuukka Rask in the 4th game in Philly. What's your take on the Flyers matchup against Boston and maybe what they need to do to kind of break through against them?
I honestly feel like the 2 most recent games against Boston, we did play better, but they really just have to capitalize on their opportunities and not give up 2 goals within the span of 2.5 minutes, which seems like has been our MO against them so far this year.
And no dumbass penalties.
That was ridiculous. That was true implosion if I've ever seen it, and it was all our fault. Even if some of those penalties kind of questionable, they're still called and could be called at any time. It's just they did it at the wrong time. But I really do think that, we kind of have been working our way to kind of counter them. And it's just try to maintain that and, just shore it up defensively, especially after giving up a goal. Because, it seems like specifically against Boston, it seems like we're giving up 1 goal and then immediately another within 180 seconds. It's just been crazy.
Yeah, that's what happened, I believe, the last time we played them. We had a 1-0 lead, and they scored the tying goal, and then just it's literally 27 seconds later, Elliott let up a pretty bad goal to, I think it was Sean Curali, that ended up being the GWG in that game. And the Flyers didn't do much offensively. I think they only had the 1 goal.
So bad. It was so bad, and it really lost us the game. And we tried coming back as hard as they could.
And it was such a shame because Elliott had played so well in that game up until that point too.
Yeah, I agree.
So I agree. They need to avoid those quick meltdowns that they had, and that first loss of the second series against Boston, where they had the bad penalties at the end, they blew a 3-1 lead. Kevin Hayes, as I said last time on the show, that his penalty was pretty questionable. I didn't think it was worthy of a call. Nonetheless, they gave up the tying goal there, and then Scott Lawton, with one of the dumbest penalties I've ever seen in my life, at the end of regulation, ended up with the Bruins potting the game winner in overtime on the power play there. So they've got to avoid the mental mistakes against this team.
That Lawton penalty was so bad because the ref was directly in front of him. Yeah, you might be able to get away with that if the referee may be behind you, to the side of you, but not directly in front of you, where he's watching you completely just commit a penalty. It was ridiculous.
And it was even worse because it was in the dying seconds of regulation in a situation where there was literally no chance of the Bruins getting a scoring chance in those final seconds there.
Yeah, I guess frustration or whatever, who knows. But it happens. Got to move on.
And Boston is a team, they're such a veteran-savvy team with guys like Bergeron and Marchand that when they get opportunities like that, when you feed them opportunities like that, they're going to take advantage 100% of the time. Or maybe not 100%, but more often than not, they're going to feed off of those stupid mistakes that you make. And that's why they're such a good team, because they always take advantage of those opportunities. So in order for the Flyers to beat them, they've got to be on their game, not just physically, but more so mentally.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
So because of the fact that the Flyers have been out of commission lately, we've got no games to recap. We've got to fill in some time on this show. So we took a bunch of mailbag questions. We had them come in on Twitter and through different outlets, and we picked the best ones we had. And we thank you, first off, for the questions you did have. We apologize if we're not able to get to them this time around. If not this time, we will get to them next time. But we picked a few of the best ones that we had. And so we'll start off with John in Langhorne. His question is, given that the Flyers don't have a bona fide superstar forward, but have great depth, which particular forward do you look at the most to come up big in clutch moments? Steve, what is your answer to that question there?
Sean Couturier is a superstar, but really in a clutch moment, it's probably Couturier. But this season, it's closer to being JVR right now with how well he's played. But it really just, who's going to be out on the ice in the dying seconds to really be the hero. It's going to be Giroux. Right now it's going to be JVR out there. Provorov is going to be manning the point. They're most likely going to have Voracek, and then they'll probably have Kevin Hayes or Travis Konechny out there. So that I feel like that's kind of like what they would say is like a hero line in a sense, to coin an old term from the older NHLs. Like NHL 02, you would have your hero line, you just put all 5 of your best forwards. But that's probably who they're really trusting in those moments. And I would think in those moments they're hoping for, basically the power play. And as much as we would love to see it be the captain, Claude Giroux, he's really out there just make the play and set someone else up. I'm not sure if I really 100% answered the question, but that's just the best I could explain it as.
Good enough. So you have Couturier being your guy who you think would be most likely to cash in that situation. And I could see that. He's come up big in big situations in his career. He had an overtime goal at the end of overtime against the Penguins a couple of years ago, and he's had some big goals in the playoffs as well. So he's certainly a guy I think that they could count on. I do agree that Giroux, at the prime of his career, he scored a lot of big goals. He had the overtime winner in the Game 3 of the Stanley Cup against the Blackhawks, and he had a number of big goals around that time of his career. And as he's gotten older, he's become a little bit more of a playmaker, a little bit more of a guy who sets up his teammates as opposed to being the one who scores the goals. But nonetheless, an important player to have out there with the game on the line. But I'm going to go with a guy who came up big in a number of situations last year, including a couple of overtime winners and also a great play to set up an overtime winner in the playoff series against the New York Islanders, and that is Kevin Hayes. I just think, what he was able to do in those big situations last year, he always made the right play. His physicality helps down the stretch in games, especially against other more physical teams and in a playoff-like atmosphere. I just think that bodes well for him, and he could be a guy who they could lean on when they need a goal, when they need a play to be made the most against another good team, such as Boston or such as, this year a Pittsburgh or a Washington. He's always come up big when they've needed him to, and that's the reason why they're paying them the money that they are, the $7 million a year over 7 years. I really like what he brings to the table in terms of those intangibles in big situations. So Kevin Hayes, to answer the question, would be my guy who I would want out on the ice the most in a big situation.
Yeah, I can see it. The more we see Kevin Hayes, the more I see him as kind of like a lesser Sean Couturier, and to have both on the same team is pretty great.
Especially on a team that otherwise kind of lacks that big physicality that they need in these kind of games. Yeah, those two guys are really important players. All right, so moving on to our next question here. Drayton in Delaware asks, why do the Flyers continue to play guys who make constant mistakes while others get benched for the same stuff? And I assume that he's kind of alluding to your favorite player, Eric Gustafson, constantly fucking up defensively. Meanwhile, guys like Robert Hagg has been benched a couple times, and guys like Friedman don't get consistent playing time. Maybe a little bit more solid defensively, whereas they have Gus out there and he's just a fucking turnover machine. What's your take on that, Steve?
It's kind of the coach's opinion to trust like a veteran presence, and I have never agreed with it, but it's just basically just fact. I don't think Mark Friedman should have really been benched when he was, and just hasn't really been able to get another opportunity since he got benched. Right now he should have an opportunity given the COVID thing, but Eric Gustafson did get benched. Hag got benched. It's just they're trying to match up against the other team. They think, hey, Robert Hagg's physical, so they're going to put him back out. And then Eric Gustafson, hey, our power play didn't score, so we put Gustafson back out there. He'll get an assist on the power play. And they're really also trying, especially in the shortened season, trying to establish some sort of chemistry, which goes a long way. And they just really haven't been able to find that with anyone outside of Sanheim Myers and Provorov Ghost even kind of rekindling that. It's tough to say, but it's something I've never supported. I would always give a guy has showed more potential and may make a mistake than a guy who has shown no potential, continues to make mistakes, but he's just a veteran guy. I never agree with it, but it's just the way the NHL is, unfortunately. It's bullshit. So that's just, I don't know if there's any coach that really goes against the grain in this regard.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you in that regard, just not going against the grain. And I think that the money has something to do with it as well. They signed Gustafson to the contract, assuming that he was going to come in and play, the lion's share of the games. And I think that as much as people don't want to admit it, I think that does have something to do with it. And as you mentioned, the chemistry as well. It's important to build chemistry regardless of whether or not guys are playing well. I think that building the chemistry, it's not going to make a player better skilled wise, but it will make their defensive pairing a little bit better as the season goes along. So I think that's an important thing as well. That being said, I really, really, really despise watching Eric Gustafson play defense. He does add an element offensively. He's nice on the power play. That's a good thing to have, but So
you've realized that Ghost is better than Gustafson defensively, right?
I'm coming to the point where I may have to admit that.
All right. We're getting close.
I may have to admit it. I'm getting close.
Ghost at least tries, or looks like he's trying, and he's at least more positionally aware and a little bit more physically engaging than Gustafson is. Gustafson has slightly improved on his overall play, but he's still just not there. He's just a waste of a signing other than improving the power play second unit.
Yeah, I hate both of them defensively, but Gustafson so far just been absolutely cringeworthy in his own end. Like he's a turnover waiting to happen, and he's really hung out Carter Hart to dry and Brian Elliott out to dry on a number of occasions so far this season. And it's something that if he doesn't fix it, then they've got to fix it. And by them fixing it, I mean, removing him from the lineup or giving him a better defensive pairing.
Yeah.
So that's been a headache, and I can see why Drayton would be frustrated with that as well. I would love to see Mark Friedman get more playing time, and he will with the COVID situation. I hope that he does something out there to prove that, he should be in the lineup more often than not, and that maybe he's more valuable to the team than Eric Gustafson is. So it'll be interesting to see there. All right, so Dan in Jersey asks, are the Flyers too soft? Meaning, do they need to up their physicality and size to compete with teams like Boston? Steve, what's your take on that?
No. If you were to look at Boston's roster, you would try to point out to me somebody that's like overly physical. I would think Brad Marchand, and he's not a big dude. I mean, they're defensemen, kind of. Carlo's a bigger guy. Clifton, I forget who he fought. He fought someone in our game. Albie Kubel, I believe.
Yes, it was Knack. Yep.
All right. Cool. I thought I was misremembering, but glad I wasn't. And Aubrey Kubel, in our sense, he's basically our fourth line grinder with offensive touch. He's going to go out there. He's going to hit. Robert Hagg's going to get his hits, be close to the lead in hits. That's because he never has the puck, and he's trying to get the puck away from someone else, but then he hits someone, and then the puck goes to another player on the other team. Sure, could we use a guy that is going to really improve our ability to wear a team down? Yeah, I'll agree with that, but I wouldn't say that we're overly soft. We're just playing a different game, and it would be more of a mindset that you would try to implement. And some of these players will do it. Connecting will do it. Patrick's a bigger dude. He does have his concussion problems, but I think about people saying that we need to be more physical, and then I would love to point to someone like Oscar Lindblom. He doesn't look overly physical. He doesn't look like he plays overly physical, but he's still winning a good majority of the board battles, the puck battles that he's in, and that's because he's smart. He's a very, very high hockey IQ player. That's what I would look for, is more of a player with a higher hockey IQ than the average player, let alone the mediocre physical player.
Speaking of Lindy, he fucking laid someone out in that game against the Capitals, and nobody even mentioned anything about it. Like, there are no Twitter posts or anything about it, but I
doesn't fit the narrative.
I remember specifically he fucking laid somebody out right behind the net, and that was a pretty big hit, and it was kind of surprising to see it coming from him. You're right about the fact that he is good at those battles along the boards. I think what Dan is alluding to in his question, though, is Boston's bottom lines. They've got guys like Nick Ritchie's a big dude, Sean Corrali's a big physical player, and Charlie Coyle as well. He's 6'3", he's a big physical guy as well, and they've had some success against the Flyers this year, and I think they've been, obviously, most of the damage has been done by Pasternak and Marchand. They're a thorn in the Flyers' side constantly. I can't remember the last time Marchand didn't have a point against the Flyers. I think it was like 5 years ago or something like that. But those bottom lines for Boston have done a good job of wearing down the Flyers forwards in the 4 games that they played so far. And I think that's what Dan is alluding to, and I think he has a point that the Flyers maybe they could gain an edge or at least be even with Boston competitively if their bottom lines could kind of do the same thing to the Flyers or to Boston's top end forwards as well. So I think that there is something to maybe adding a little bit more physicality, maybe putting Sam Morin in the lineup. If you can fit him in on that fourth line for a game against Boston, I think that might be beneficial. But that's just my take on it. I think that they could. And not just against Boston, but also against other Eastern Conference, the physical teams like Washington, like the Islanders as well. I think that they could be something that they might look into addressing at some point this season.
Yeah, I can see that. And to your point of Boston's bottom lines really being physical against us, Connor Bundeman has shown, a decent amount of physicality when he's out there. He's improved his skating, which allows him to really engage physically a lot more. And I've seen that from him, at least. I can't speak for anyone else, but he seems like that kind of guy. He's going to be a wear down fourth liner, make a real career out of it, and good for him. But do we need a couple other players like that? As long as we have Bunneman doing that, and then somebody like Albie Kubel also doing similar things, whilst also having a higher skill level, more playmaking, a better shot, and then Raffle just doing other little things. That's a great fourth line.
Yeah, that much I agree with, and I think you could look at Albie Kubel and see a guy who's struggled a little bit offensively this season, and I think that if he's able to kind of come into his own there and produce a little bit more offensively, and same with Raffle as well. If those guys, you don't expect big numbers from them, but if they could, do a little bit more on the offensive end, I think that'll kind of take care of most of that argument there.
Yep, I agree. But everyone's going to continue to say this until we have some Jody Shelley asshole that really appease these fans.
Fucking Jody Shelley and Jay Rosehill, man.
Jesus Christ. Don't remind me about those times.
Oh, man. All right, so the next question comes from Lauren in Media, and this is, what are your thoughts on the reverse retro jersey? Steve, take it away.
I like it. We've only played one game in it, haven't we?
Yes, 1 game.
Yeah, well, okay, so they're cursed. We play one game in them, then we get COVID. No. I just want to see it more, be able to actually like see it like during like an actual Flyers broadcast, not the NBC. I think it was. I don't remember. I'm probably getting games confused, but I just want to see it on the ice more and then really decide on an opinion because it looks great. Like just looking at that jersey, it looks great, but seeing jerseys on ice kind of gives you a different opinion on them.
See, I like the idea, but I would have rather they had just gone with regular retro instead of reverse retro. I loved the old, the white shoulders with the black piping and then the orange body of the jersey.
Yeah, I can agree with that, but I won't lie. I was not in my right state of mind Saturday when it was Winnipeg and Ottawa, and the game was on mute, and this is just about reverse retro in general. I was watching it, and for whatever reason, just those Winnipeg Jets reverse retros looked like the Lightning. Like an older school, like Lightning blue jerseys for some reason. That's all I could think of. And maybe it was the beer, but I wasn't sure. And then I was like, wait a second. It's all Canadian division. Then it hit me. I'm like, oh, shit. But no, I like the majority of these reverse retros. It's just...
I like Calgary's. Calgary's got a really nice one.
Oh, yeah, they went full Atlanta Flames, didn't they?
Yeah, it's a really sick look. One jersey that I am going to call out, and it pains me to do this because Vegas is kind of my Western Conference team that I root for, but those gold helmets are fucking hideous.
Hey, they had to try it eventually. I can't argue that they did it. They had to do it eventually, and reverse retro was the time.
Those things are fucking and not only that, but the gold jerseys that they have look way too much like those puke yellow jerseys that the Predators had 10 years ago.
Great logo, terrible color. Those Predators jerseys. Also, the Vegas has like that red jersey now too, right?
They do, yeah. That's a sick jersey. I like that one.
It just reminds me of the Buffalo Sabres, like black and red jerseys, and I love those jerseys.
Oh yeah, back when they had Hasek in that, I believe.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good jerseys. I like those ones. Just I had to call out those Vegas reverse retros. Those things are fucking hideous and should never ever be worn ever again. Just like the Flyers 50th anniversary jersey, the worst fucking jersey ever.
With gold in it, it made no sense. There was zero understanding for why they would even put gold in the jersey.
No,
it was the orange and black, and also white.
Yep.
Don't add anything else.
Yeah. Flyers have never had gold as one of their colors. It did not make any sense to me.
Right. It's probably the worst, and that's saying something because I absolutely loathe the 3D jerseys that we wore.
Oh, the Metallica 3D logo?
Yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree there. That was a bad jersey. And I remember as a kid at the time, I kind of liked it, and I was disappointed that they wouldn't wear it for playoff games. And... Now that my taste in jerseys has kind of matured a little bit, yeah, that was a fucking hideous jersey.
So bad.
All right, well, next question coming in from Kyle in Jersey. His question is, if the Flyers win a cup with their current core, how much credit should Hextall get? And Ron Hextall, of course, joining the Pittsburgh Penguins recently, so that's some big news there. But he's got a point that Ron Hextall built the core of this Flyers team. And Steve, how much credit would you give him if the Flyers were to win a cup with this core?
85%.
Sounds fair.
I mean, the other 15 is just, getting rid of Hextall and getting a very nearly elite coach, and then also making a bit of a splash and risky splash and getting Hayes. But that's basically it. Hextall built this team outside of the core that he acquired. I mean, all these draft picks, that was all Hextall. Carter Hart, Travis Sanheim, signing undrafted free agent Philip Myers, drafting Oscar Lindblom, drafting Nolan Patrick, which kind of was a no-brainer at the time, trading up to draft Konechny. Hextall,
and also trading for Morgan Frost as well.
Yes, the Braden Shen trainer led to Morgan Frost as well. Drafting Joel Farabee, I believe, was him as well. I think that was his final pick.
I believe so, yeah.
Drafting Mark Friedman, if he plays a part in it. Bringing in Brian Elliott to be the backup.
Kinda hot. I don't know if you mentioned him.
Yeah, yep. Of course. Always have to bring up the number one goalie. It's just, he has had such an instrumental part of the building of this team that maybe, the comparisons are out there in other leagues, the Ed Wade, where he couldn't land the ship. Sure, that seems like what it is.
That's a parallel that I was going to draw too, so yeah.
Yeah, that, potentially Sam Hinkie kind of, but the league stepped in there for the NBA to say, no, you got to stop this bullshit chicanery, which was a very stupid and pretty controversial thing that I don't think was really made as big of a deal as it should have been.
Yeah, agreed.
But Hextall was able to do all of this, and sure, he made some mistakes. His biggest one was staying with Hextall. Sure, he got Jory Laterra of all people in the Braden Shen trade. Sure, he signed Dale Weiss to a terrible contract, but he was also able to get out of a lot of shitty contracts that he was, that he
inherited.
Thank you. Couldn't think of the word. Like his ability to get rid of the Chris Pronger and Nicholas Grossman, Vincent LeCavalier, Zach Ronaldo. Ron Hextall got 2 third-round picks for Zach Ronaldo and Ty McGinn. Ty McGinn was like our best prospect at one point. Who's not even the NHL anymore. Might not even be the AHL. Ron Hextall was fantastic. Fucking A, don't get me started on that. I'm already started on how great Ron Hextall actually was. But it's just, he's in a different situation with Pittsburgh now. And I think he can do well with Pittsburgh, and that scares the shit out of me. He actually has, future Hall of Famers there in Crosby and Malkin. And he's going to be able to rebuild them. Like, he's going to be able to retool them. Because he doesn't need a lot of draft picks, because he's very good at drafting.
And you know how former Flyers are with going over to Pittsburgh and having success, too.
Oh, right.
Look at Tocchet winning cups as an assistant coach.
Yeah, Tocchet. Recchi was kind of there before, and then he went back.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's bothersome. But if we win the cup this year, Ron Hextall deserves a shit ton of credit, and 85% is the bare minimum, I would say.
Wouldn't it be awesome if he went to Pittsburgh and just completely fucking sabotaged them?
I can see him doing that. He wants other jobs after Pittsburgh.
It's not going to happen. Don't get me wrong. It's not going to happen. But
the real dynamic is that Brian Burke is their president of hockey ops. So how's that relationship going to work out? Who knows?
I think Brian Burke had hurt them more than help out there. But I do agree. Hextall, not Hextall. Hextall should deserve the lion's share of the credit if the Flyers are able to. Well, first of all, he does deserve the lion's share of the credit for the success that they are having, and he should get the lion's share of the credit if they do end up winning a cup with the score, which, fingers crossed, I think they have a very good chance. I'm not going to say they will, because if I say they will, I'm probably going to curse them like I curse everything else. But yeah, I do give him the lion's share of the credit. And by the way, he did fire Hextall, maybe waited a little bit too long to do that, but brought in Scott Gordon, obviously, as the interim towards the end of his tenure as the Flyers GM, and then it was up to Fletcher to bring in AV. So
Hextall did not fire Hextall, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that we fired Hextall. Fletcher was there, and then he still gave Hextall some sort of a trial run while Fletcher was there, and then eventually they finally gave up on him. But Hextall was too married to Dave Hextall, and that was his undoing.
They both kind of happened right around the same time, if I remember correctly. I can't remember which one happened
There was
first.
2 weeks of a 6-game stretch or something like that.
Something like that, yeah. So if I'm incorrect, then I apologize. I stand corrected there. But yeah, as far as bringing in the talent and developing the core of this team, I mean, he's brought in so much young talent just in really a short period of time, and really, as you alluded to, unfucked the cap situation as well, getting rid of some of those big, unproductive contracts that they had. So yeah, I give him a lot of credit, and he brought them from basically no man's land where they're a perpetual 40 win a year team, 8 seed or whatever you want to call it, second wild card every year. He brought them from that to a team that's going to compete to win the Eastern Conference, and hopefully within the next few years compete for a Stanley Cup. So he deserves a lion's share of the credit for that. He did an excellent job in completely fixing the situation here in Philadelphia.
Absolutely.
Right, so moving on to our final question here. Mike and Marcus Hook asks, what's your go-to beer of choice when taking in a game at the Wells Fargo Center? And Steve, you're a beer guy, so I know you've got one.
Did you say from Marcus Hook?
Marcus Hook. Yep,
That's a place.
it is. It's
Glad we have
County.
listeners from there. Okay, I never heard of it. I apologize.
It's really not.
I mean,
far
no
from-
offense.
it's literally it's right next to Chester.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Sorry again. Beer of choice. I usually go with lager.
Yingling.
Yeah. When I'm at home, I'll usually have like a sour monkey or something like that, a nice craft beer. But lager's like my go-to, like kind of domestic. So when I'm there, I'll get the tall cans. You
might as well get your money's worth.
Right.
Get as close to your money's worth as you possibly can.
Yeah. I will say if they have a Victory, I will usually splurge for the smaller one for a Victory because I love Victory Brewing Company.
That's a solid choice there. Usually I go with the Yingling just because I'm kind of basic. I like Yingling. It's a good beer. Might as well pay the extra $2, pay whatever, 16 for the big can as opposed to 14 for the second largest one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I remember. Do you remember when they opened up like the fancier like bar like kind of area like
up at the
bar stand
the top,
kind of?
Right?
Yeah,
the standing room only up there.
I haven't been there, but like even just like in the second level, like they added like kind of a spirits section in a sense.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so they opened that up, and I fucking love Jameson. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna see how much it is, and I might go for it. I think it was like $15, and I could not go for it.
Yeah, fuck that.
Actually, I might be wrong. I may have went for it. May have just gotten a big bonus, and once in a lifetime thing, I wasn't gonna pass up.
Fuck it, right?
Yeah. But never again. For the lager.
It's a one-time thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I said, I'm a Yingling guy, so at the Wells Fargo, generally Yingling. Might go for some Goose Island if they have that there.
Oh, Goose Island, yes.
At home, I've been on a Goose Island kick lately, so once they resume play, I'm probably going to be drinking some Goose Island on Thursday night as I watch them. But yeah, those are my beers of choice. I don't do, aside from Yingling, I don't do domestics anymore. I don't do like Miller Lite, Bud Light. I think I kind of grown out of that.
Yeah. I had Amstel Light the other day, and it's not terrible, but I just wouldn't go out of my way to have it. But
Steve Coates
lager
approves
all the
of
way.
that.
What's that?
Steve Coates approves of that.
Oh, I'm sure he does. He approves of whatever is alcoholic.
Oh yeah, good old Coatesy. Anyway, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap this one up here?
No, we're wrapping this just in time so I can scout out the Rangers while they play the Devils.
That's a good game to watch. I'm actually going to check out the Buffalo and the Islanders game. That's one that I have eyed up right now.
There you go.
Both of them should be good games. But
yeah, my friend's a Rangers fan. He's got the NHL TV and let me use his login. I'm hoping it doesn't fuck him over, but if it does, I will probably switch to that Sabres game you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if you need a login, I've got NHL TV as well, so just hit me up if you need that. I just want to touch on the rescheduled games real quick. I meant to do that in the beginning of the show, kind of forgot about that, but in no particular order because NHL.com presented it to us in no particular order. April 27th against the Capitals has been moved to March 7th. April 25th against the Islanders has been moved to March 22nd. February 11th, the game that we were supposed to have against New Jersey has been moved to the original date of the Islanders game, April 25th. April 1st, April Fool's Day at New Jersey has been moved to April 27th, which was originally scheduled against the Caps. And also the game that we were supposed to have on February 13th against New Jersey has been moved to May 10th. Yes, that's right. Regular season hockey in May. And they've also still got a few games that have yet to be rescheduled. The February 9th game, which was supposed to be the second leg against Washington, that has yet to find a new date, as well as the Valentine's Day game at New York, and also a game scheduled for March 7th up in Boston. Those three games to be determined as far as the rescheduled dates go. But just an update there, where the Flyers stand with their games that were postponed due to COVID and kind of moving around the schedule a little bit. I'm sure we'll find out shortly where those 3 games will end up. I just want to give a shout out real quick to Just Food. You can reach them by phone at 215-794-3663. It's 215-794-FOOD. You're looking for food to eat while you're watching the Flyers or for any occasion whatsoever. They have an excellent selection there. Their owner, Asian Rob, a great guy, a great friend of the Always Next to Your Podcast Network. You can find them in Buckingham Square in Buckingham, Pennsylvania, off of Route 202. Once again, that's Just Food. You can find them by phone at 215-794-3663. We thank you for listening to this episode of The Disciples of Ed, and we'll be back with another one next week.
Man, I used to be revered and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me call shin all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and such eagle my